Let's talk about the components of self-love. Self-love has so many parts to it. In your manual, I wrote down those pieces so that you could have a measuring tool to say, oh, good job, little buddy. Today I had some self-acceptance. That's a component of self-love. So let's start with the first one of self-forgiveness. Now, this is a deep subject. I'm just going to say it. Self-forgiveness is going to be one of the hardest ones that you take on, the hardest pieces of self-love. And the reason, let's talk about first why. Why is self-forgiveness so difficult? I'll tell you another client story that helps. He said to me, if I forgive myself for that, then I might do it again. So I need to hold on to being upset with myself for it because that was really bad behavior and I don't want to do it again. There is an element of that, isn't there? But when a person has a need to hold on to a negative emotion, it's because the payoff of that emotion serves them. So in his mind, he thinks if he doesn't forgive himself, it will keep him conformed to the right and wrong rules, to being right. But in actuality, by not forgiving the self, what's happening in his energy field? He's in disarray. He feels tightness in his gut, in his muscles. He feels that the flow of life can't move through him because he needs to feel bad and wrong. He needs to feel guilt to keep himself conformed. Does anybody else feel that? Do you remember being in a construct or a place where mom and dad would guilt you into doing something to get you to do what they wanted you to do? This is where we learn this behavior. And so now he is self-directing. I can't forgive myself for having an affair because if I forgive myself, I might go do it again. Because I just like women. And so when I helped him to say, well, women are beautiful and it's okay to like women, and gave him permission to like women, then what happens, and to help him to understand what drives that behavior, the coping skill, and not feeling love and looking for love in all the wrong places, you were just out of integrity with it. And how do you forgive yourself? By understanding what drives the behavior. Well, every person on the planet wants to feel loved, valued, needed, and approved. What do we call that, team? Loveness. Do you remember the loveness from our last class? The loveness. We all want the loveness, to be loved, valued, needed, and approved. And we will look outside of ourselves to get that feeling. And we will have coping skills to feed us that feeling. And they're unhealthy. So how do we have self-forgiveness? How can we forgive ourselves? If I don't punish myself enough, then I'm going to do it again. And to say, I have forgiveness for myself? Now, bringing in forgiveness for self, what happens is a feeling of love and compassion come in for self, understanding why you do what you do. And as you move back into alignment with love, well, guess what happens? You naturally have a desire to be integrous. You naturally have a desire to be in alignment. And then you don't desire your coping skills, or you're transparent about them. And you can move back into integrity with it. So self-forgiveness helps the process of healing that coping skill by understanding that by having more self-love and more self-compassion, which is part of self-forgiveness, is the compassion piece of it. And it's understanding how these things are rooted in our childhood. But you can see that the process of forgiveness is different than the process of repentance. And as you separate those, then you can move into the process of forgiveness and why it would be beneficial for you. Because as you get back into feeling that love, you emanate. All right, how about self-acceptance? What is that? I screwed up, and I'm going to do screw-ups again and again and again in my life. I may not do a big one or to that severity, but yes, I make mistakes. And it's accepting that there are two parts to us. There's the love and the ego. And in the ego part, we have the need to sabotage. It's very unconscious, but that need to prove ourselves creates sabotage. That need to look for love in all the wrong places creates sabotage. That need causes problems. But when we move into acceptance, the need falls away. It's even facing that dark. I need love. Okay, I accept that. I accept that I need love. But I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. We're going to talk about this afternoon where to find that love so that you stop looking in all the wrong places. Self-compassion. That was the one I mentioned, but so important part of forgiveness. Self-compassion is being able to see the child self who took on the pattern. So the child self said, I must lie in order to be good enough. I must embellish the story so that mom and dad don't know the truth because I'm going to be in trouble if I don't. I must do, it's the I must, and whatever you put behind that, for love. And understanding what you must do for love, again, it's self-awareness, brings in compassion. Because you understand it's rooted in a child who felt a lack of love, who felt lack of love, valued, needed, and approved. And so that child went seeking it everywhere else. And the more we seek out here, the more disappointed we will be. Now, it's a quick fix, and we'll get on a high, and we'll feel the rush of that new relationship or whatever is giving us that love enough feeling. But it's temporary, and it usually ends in disappointment because no one and no thing can fill that love void permanently. You can get a quick fix, but to permanently heal that is a process. It's alignment. It's coming back to the truth of who we are as love. But love cannot be added or taken away from you. That's the point to even sit with. Because who we are is love. It can't be changed. Okay, so compassion comes from understanding the root of your pattern, and we're going to be doing that today. Understanding where the pattern was birthed, where you first picked it up, where you continue to carry it on, where you sabotage with it. And then the biggest piece of the pattern cycle that especially you life coaches need to know is the payoff. You're going to help your client dig deep into the payoff. What has that behavior done for you? And my clients will say to me, nothing. It's brought me a lot of pain. I go, well, you wouldn't continue to do it if it didn't give you a payoff. Right? Let's take an obvious one. Avoidance. We all do this one. We avoid pain because we avoid doing our homework. It's not very fun. And then we pay the price of not doing our homework. But avoiding problems, avoiding problem people, avoiding conflict, not having tough conversations because we don't want to be bad and wrong. The payoff is I don't have to be bad and wrong. As soon as I have this conversation, I'm going to be bad and wrong. And that's why people, kids, especially at a very young age, learn to avoid problems. Let's not talk about the problem. Let's not look at the problem. If we have to talk about the problem, I'm always the guilty one. And so what will that person marry or attract in their life? Person to make them the problem. That's so lovely. You get to be right about it. So when you understand that you're doing this to yourself, but the payoff in your pattern is always the same. life coaches, this part's important. The payoff is always the same. 2 things you get out of your pattern. Number 1, I get to feel safe. I don't have to confront this problem and be bad and wrong. So I get to be safe for a little while, and then it gets messy, right? And I get to be right about it. I get to be right about not being good enough. See, I'm not good enough, so I procrastinate. So I get to be safe, and I get to be right about it, because the subconscious wants to be right about that core belief, even though it hurts so much and it creates so much pain in your life. So that's where self-compassion, helping your client understand that the reason you have looked for love in all the wrong places is because when you were a child, you were feeling that void. And the only way you felt loved is if you did life a certain particular way. And so you feel like you have to be perfect, and you know you can't be perfect, but you go looking for love in all the wrong places to fill that void. Or the avoidance that you're doing was to keep you safe from the wrath of dad or mom. And when you understand the child self, that's where self-compassion comes in. And it is at the foundation of self-forgiveness. It's at the foundation of self-love. Okay, next. So we call this an emotional intelligence. It's a key factor in emotional intelligence. We must have emotional resilience in life to be able to handle the stressors of life. And when we understand how we get resilient by facing the problem and accepting the problem, stop avoiding the problem, it makes us more resilient to know I can do hard things. Like you mentioned, I've done it in the past and I was okay. I've been here before, I'm okay. Resilience is by practicing life, you get to see you can do life. You survive that. And not only survive, but you thrived. You learn something after the fact. You learn something from that. That has made you more resilient. Losing the identity of mother at the age of 30 when I have very young children taught me to be very resilient. It put me in the depths of hell for a long period of time. But as I came out of that, going through bankruptcy, losing my kids, losing the foundation of everything to me that I thought was security was my gift, because it made me resilient to know I could be dropped on a tropical island somewhere and I can go meet people and I would survive. I can create a business there. I would be okay. I can be okay being alone. I can be okay losing identities. And going through hard things and coming out on the other side okay helps create that resiliency. And you are not so susceptible to other people, how they treat you. But when you are worshiping the God of what other people think, you will be constantly acquiescing, constantly people-pleasing, being the chameleon, trying to be what they want you to be. And as long as you're doing that, you're losing your power center. And as you're trying to be what other people want you to be, you lose the self. And then you don't even know what self-love is. You think that love and acceptance is happening, but it's only happening temporarily because you are people-pleasing. And as long as you are looking for love from those people, you will be constantly disappointed. Like, I can't do it. You'll feel overwhelmed, shut down, run down. I can't do it. And so learning what your own identity is and learning how to be true to you. What is my truth? And it's okay if it's not your truth. That's okay. We can agree to disagree on that. So learning how to do hard things, learning how to know what your wants are and your don't wants are. Learn your likes and your dislikes. It's my little unique book. It was really written for adults. It's a little rhyme written for adults. It was written for me. Really. Cassandra, learn your likes and dislikes and be true to you. And I've done that many times in my life, over and over and over again, having to hit that reset. So emotional resilience says I can do hard things. I can go through hard emotions and I can come out better on the other side. It's also learning that what other people think of you will come and go. And people are going to think ill will of you, and you're okay with that. That's a big piece of emotional resilience also. Stop needing to people please. Okay, self-care. Self-care is pampering yourself. It's doing the things that you love to do. It's exercising each day, drinking water, making sure that you get your supplements in, doing your for me, my intermittent fasting, and then doing my special drink that I do that has loaded with everything. It's caring for the body. It's caring for your emotional needs, your physical needs, your spiritual needs. I know I prefer an hour of quiet time every morning for meditation, and sometimes I get 10 minutes and sometimes I get an hour. That's self-care. It's putting yourself on your calendar. It's putting your own needs in that schedule so that you make sure to get your needs met. As you meet your needs, you stop self-sacrificing. And the more you stop self-sacrificing, the more you can show up to love others. I know it sounds like this whole juxtaposing thing happened. The more that I love myself, the more I can love others. Yes. You'll stop self-sacrificing and you'll be able to show up and serve them in an authentic way because you're serving yourself authentically. And really cool magic happens as you do this. So anything, self-care, anything that brings joy and relaxation to you. So these are all components of self-love. And if we go back to what is self-love, then it's being able to have all of these pieces. It's being able to forgive yourself as soon as you catch how much you're beating up on yourself. It's able to accept that you are going to make mistakes. You're learning from your mistakes. It's having compassion because you go and do the inner child work, which is what we're going to be doing this afternoon. When you understand the child self and the child's needs and what happened that caused those distorted thinkings when you were little, it helps you to have more compassion for yourself. And the resilience, by going through hard things, you know that you can do hard things and you don't have to be emotionally destroyed by it. And then resilience at the end is being, after going through all these hard things, at the end of it, you say, there was something good that came from it. And then you move into being able to have more self-care each day for yourself. So I encourage you to check these throughout your day. And rather than going through, have I done all these things today? I'm going to encourage you to use your emotional scale. The 0 to 10 scale. This one's a little easier. It's the map of consciousness, but simpler. Know where you're at. 0, I want to die. 10 is the best I've ever felt. 5 is neutral. Know where you're at all times. And know why you're there. Know what your thinking has done to you. That it wasn't anybody out here. They may have said something and then you had a perception about it. But it's always you choosing how you feel. So a big component of self-love is being self-aware. Why you're there and what thoughts that you were doing that took you out of alignment and what thoughts you can do to bring you back into those higher numbers.